Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Roussel. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you are curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range. All right, man. Here we go. We're back with another episode of the Gray Range Podcast with my co-host, Lucas Orich, and myself, David Roussel. So welcome back, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here again.
For sure.
On short notice.
Yeah, well, we kind of trying to get a few more episodes out here. Summer's winding down. People are a little more set schedules. And one of my, I often view like September, because my birthday falls at the end of August. Yeah. So it's kind of like another start to the year. It's like you have 12 years of your life or even longer if you're in post-secondary where your year ends and starts in a different way. Yeah. So I've always had this mentality at like the tail end of summer, that's the beginning of something.
Yeah, same. My birthday's early September, so it's like, it's always kind of that beginning of, everything starts again in September, all the classes.
Yeah, for sure. I always find I'm like start putting my life back together after just a summer of like fucking around, and then start like planning all my projects and looking forward to, winter's usually a lot of work. Business that I'm in, oil field, Alberta, it's busier than shit in the wintertime. So I don't do much other than work in winter. But then I start to set up the schedule where it's like my wife's schedule, my schedule, we set everything up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to add, I want to add a few more episodes, get a little bit more content out to the people.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the piece I got picked out today is kind of some of the, I don't know if it's like topically darker, but there's a few different ones like this that are kind of in this collection that are almost like written from the point of view of a person, something that's not a person, but as if it were a person.
Right.
So I kind of got this one like that. So first of all, cheers.
Cheers, bro.
Welcome back. Damn, that's good. This is called Atrocity. It was never easy. It was never quiet. The atrocity had merely moved on. It changed location to a distance that must have seemed like it was gone, but it wasn't really gone. We mourned, we grieved, but then we resumed our lives, and after a time, the memory of pain faded, as it does, thankfully. After that, few of us remembered, and fewer still prepared, for the return of atrocity. Half a world away, in another city, or just across the street, they that lived there came to know atrocity well. In an unstable nation, it was as easy to seek suffering, coerce the greedy and feeble-minded to cause great hurt. Desperate people, wiping out other more desperate people. In a bad neighborhood, an old squalid tenement, a sweet poison draws the addicts, which draws the hustlers who form gangs to increase their market share and defend their territory until the innocent are murdered over perceived slights and hurt feelings. Across the street, a child watches his mother, bruised and bleeding, lay on the floor as his father stands over her, calling her a stupid whore. That child knows atrocity now. He may come to befriend atrocity and invite it into his life someday and show horror to another person who is blissfully unaware that atrocity dwelled so close. It lingers long in dark shadows of distant memories, but never fades completely. Every moment of every day, atrocity is growing, feeding, nurtured on humanity's madness. It is our monster, our unholy creation, the prodigal son that will one day return, the one we ignored, hoping it would go away forever. It had merely moved on to another place for a little while. There is no end to atrocity. It exists as long as we do. There is only the time between when it is gone and when it returns. Few remember, and fewer still prepare.
I would say the one thing about written words, much like poetry, is kind of like music, is that's pretty timeless, because you could apply that to when he wrote it. I'm sure there was a lot going on in the world, and it applies today. I mean, there's kind of that.
There's always a lot going on.
There
in
is,
the world.
man. Yeah, and something like atrocity. I mean, that's a daily occurrence.
Yeah,
something horrible happening. So
yeah, well, I think I took part of this from a book that of George Carlin's, the comedian back in the day.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I believe there was a line in there about, we have these atrocities, these big human events that happen either in our country or in another country, and even in our personal lives, we have these big events that happen. And then the news comes on and they say, well, now is the time, for healing and everything will return to normal. But there's no normal. It's just a small pause until the next atrocity.
Yeah, I think so, because it's you kind of bounce from one terrible thing to another as a society. I mean, I think generally speaking, it captures your attention for as long as until the next headline drops, unless it happened to you. I mean, then it's deeply personal. So it's kind of
Yeah, and I think even some people seem to move from horrible event to horrible event. I think you kind of get to pick what your wave tops are in life at some point, where your landmarks are. And for some people, it's negative events.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are seemingly cursed with a never-ending litany of negative events.
That's a fact. It's a terrible way to go through life, though. Hopefully, their wave tops aren't all negative like that.
Well, I think you do get to choose a little bit, and I think it's like that with the media too. The media chooses to show us the negative events, chooses to show us the atrocity.
Sure.
And that's what piques our interest and kind of keeps us in line a little bit, right? It's it's almost like the farmer, just letting the hawk grab one chicken, just so that the rest of the chickens kind of stay in line.
Yeah, stay in the pen, motherfucker.
Right? So the atrocity happens and the media shows it oh, look what happened. This person strayed off the path, lived a high risk lifestyle or was involved in something, or they'll spin it whatever way they want to spin it in order to get the outcome that they want. And then everything kind of goes back to this placid top. There's still all the stuff going on under the water. Nothing changed until the next event happens.
Sure.
And I think part of that was the few remember and fewer still prepare, right? So few people, I think, look at those situations, no matter what they are, whether they're personal disasters to natural disasters that affect thousands of people, and look at it and say, okay, that sucked. What can I do to prevent atrocity, to prevent that in my life? What can I, how can I shore up the walls a little bit or hedge my bets a little bit against the terrible or most terrible things that can happen?
I think that's one of the curses of being human, though, is nobody really prepares till it happens to them, and then it's too late. Then they prepare for it after, so it never happens again. But it's okay, statistically, maybe that's your one time that something bad was going to happen to you. It's kind of like if we talked a little while ago about all the fires, right? And how, people's houses are burning down and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's nothing new. I mean, this has been happening for, quite a few years, where there's these big fires and somebody loses their home. And you would think that if you had a cabin in the woods or your house was in the woods, you would be like, oh, geez, I should fire smart this thing, right? I should cut a few trees down, water my grass, and create a green space. And I shouldn't have that stack of firewood on my deck. Maybe it should be in a shed across the, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But people don't do that. They wait until their house burns down. And then, of course, when they rebuild, they take all the precautions. But it's kind of people seem reluctant to kind of step up and, take the necessary steps to prevent that kind of stuff or mitigate it, right? So in some cases, you can only do so much, but you can always try and, risk mitigation's real too. You can try and do what you can ahead of time. But.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the bigger, personal or interpersonal atrocities that people run into is person-to-person violence.
Sure.
And it's a fact. I don't think that anybody would dispute this, that you don't know what it is until it affects you, like literally in your life. Like everybody has a Hollywood notion of A, what violence is, and B, their reaction to it.
Yeah.
Until they're faced with real interpersonal violence, real malevolence aimed directly at them. And then suddenly they realize, I have no tools.
Yeah.
I think some people, that happens to them very early in life, where somebody that they trust, be it a family member or they're raised in violence, sure. and they get exposed to it right away. So they know the real cost of violence. Or there may be people who get involved in martial arts or something like real contact, like boxing, jiu-jitsu, something where the outcomes are high stakes, where you're going to get hurt or you're going to get knocked out, you're going to get put to sleep.
Yeah.
It's got these outcomes.
Well, and those outcomes are determined by who's better at violence.
100%, but that's the thing that most people don't realize. If they don't have a real education in it, be it voluntarily or not. And I think that's where I'm getting at, is there's like two kinds of educations in violence. There's the voluntary, where you go out and either you pick fights or you fight for either sport, recreation, or a living.
Yeah.
Or you are involuntary, where either you grew up in a bad home or a shitty neighborhood or whatever. I guess there would be a third type of violence where it would be like institutional violence, where you're going, like if you're a cop or you're a soldier, you're in the military.
Yeah, your job's to be on the front line
exactly.
of violence, sure.
Yeah, but
I think for those people though, that like if violence is part of your profession, regardless of the percentage, maybe it's only 2% of the time or whatever, but if it's part of the profession, I look at it as it's kind of the same as the guys that box or wrestle or do whatever. You're participating. Like you put up your hand to do it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It kind of falls in that same category as far as.
I think it's a little bit different when it's in the auspices of your job.
Yeah,
it's kind of like you might have to you're in retail, you might have to deal with a combative a combative person here and there, or somebody shoplifting or whatever. But if you're in a military aspect, it's like you might have to go fight a war.
Sure.
Or if you're a cop, it's like you might have to fight every day.
Those guys don't get it easy because you don't know what the call is, right? So it could be a fist fight, knife fight, gunfight.
You could be fighting multiple fights in a day, right? And never really knowing. And part of the interesting thing about trying to prepare, I think I was digging through some old stuff here recently, and I came across the course outline that I got from James Yeager's tactical response for his fighting rifle course.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's on up the bookshelf now. Figured I'd keep that. And one of the points that he made in it, which is kind of your biggest way to hedge the bet against violence, is don't go to stupid places doing stupid things with stupid people.
Yep.
And I think that's the quote. And I think anybody who has had an education in violence, be it voluntary or involuntary, or I guess institutional, over time is likely to have that kind of ingrained in them a little bit more. They're going to have a little bit more risk awareness and be a little bit less likely to go to the place where the dumb thing is most likely to happen.
Well, I think anybody who studies violence is more averse to it. You're like, well, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, well, it's the ultimate way to not, how do I not get killed in a bar fight?
For sure.
Don't go to bars.
Yeah.
Right?
Or if you do go to the bar and things are escalating, just leave.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Right? I think it's coming from a state like Tennessee. Yeah. It's probably a little more high stakes because you don't know, in that polite society way, who's carrying and who's not, who's armed and who's not. I think in bigger centers with more people, you don't know what someone's propensity for violence is.
Well, and I think anywhere you go, if you add alcohol and drugs to any situation, it gets unpredictable in a hurry. So you don't really get to pick how that fight's going to go. It's not that consensual slap bump. Let's figure this out. It's like, well, that guy might pull a knife or he might break a bottle across your face, or you just get to pick.
100%. And the possible outcomes of violence are so wide in spectrum that, the stakes are so high. I think that's one of the things that Hollywood really does. Probably the biggest disservice that Hollywood does to violence is, like, you see John Wick gets shot like 18 times in a movie and he's still fighting, or, he's been, viciously attacked and beaten up and still going. One punch can kill a person.
Yeah. What's interesting about Hollywood is sometimes you'll see, the hero of the story get shot by a long gun, like a sniper round.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever that is to you, right? It could be a 300 Win Mag or a 308 or whatever.
Yeah.
And, they kind of shake it off and they get a bandage and they're good. And you're like, fuck, man. Empirical evidence suggests that you'll probably lose that limb, if not die. Like, there's guys get shot in hunting accidents and you see the aftermath of these guys. It's not good.
Well,
like,
animals get shot in hunting.
Yeah. You don't just shake it off.
Yeah.
You die usually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that. And I think because we have that detachment, that it's one of those things people don't train for. It's one of those things people don't prepare for. So they don't choose to get any kind of training. They don't choose to spend their time learning about risk mitigation or properly applied violence or implied violence that's going to be able to help mitigate those situations. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a violent person. I am not a violent person. I grew up, I'm one of those people who had the involuntary education in violence. I grew up in a violent home. I saw violence growing up from people that I trusted, and I have a really, really rough relationship with it. I don't like it. I'm not a violent person. I'm just that way. But because I've had some training and I know how to not, look like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm probably less of a mark for somebody who's looking to victimize someone than someone who's
a little
not.
Awareness goes a long ways. I think once you if you study conflict at all and you take some classes or take some training, pretty soon your head's on a swivel and you help deselect yourself
a little bit.
Just by presence. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what comes from that training. And you can see, we've both had the occasion to train with some people who've had a very high level of training and have applied that training in real world scenarios.
Yep.
And you can tell by the way that person walks, stands, carries themselves, that they're just kind of not to be fucked with.
Yep. 100%.
Like, if you're looking for somebody to victimize, that's probably not the person.
No, and in some cases they're looking to get it on. So you kind of the guys that are really good at it.
Yeah. Well, I think that,
like
people who take that as a career,
yep.
You gotta have a screw loose, man. You gotta like it a little, right? Like, and not that there's anything wrong with that. I think we definitely need those people. I know a few ex cops that when they tell stories about some of the arrests they had to make that were turned into the equivalent of a 5-round championship fight, that they say it with a smile on their face. They tell that story laughing, man.
Yeah, well, you gotta. I mean, who do you want fighting on the side of good? I mean, you want somebody who's a little bit, I don't want to say reckless, but not reckless with public safety, but maybe reckless in their own regard, as far as like they're gonna win it at whatever cost because it's that important to them. And do you want the guy that's gonna run away, or do you want the guy that's gonna finish it? Like, I want the guy that's gonna finish it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the interesting things that I found in the firearm training world, I think it was one of the things that really surprised me, was the lack of reckless bravado amongst like 99% of the people that I've trained with or under.
Yeah.
These are people who are responsible people in most aspects of their life. And they've kind of, the way I came to it was I saw a gap in a firearm's the ultimate force multiplier. Right?
Yeah.
It's the best tool for the job
for your average person that has that, for what's available on the civilian market, certainly.
100%. If serious violence or implied serious violence comes into your world, or destabilization, the best tool for that job is a firearm.
Yep.
And one of the things that I learned through training is an untrained person with a firearm is likely as dangerous as a person with bad intent, or can be.
Yeah, they can certainly be a detriment to themselves and whoever they're trying to look after, whether it's their family or their friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've taken a good bit of training in the firearms world in Canada, as limited as it is. I think between the two of us, we have probably taken most of what is offered or has been offered domestically in Canada for civilian open enrollment firearms training in the last, say, 10 years.
Sure. I mean, there's some people, there's some good schools that I haven't had a chance to train with yet. Some very well-respected trainers out there. Mostly it's just the distance thing, right?
100%. Yeah.
When we started back in the, I want to say mid-2000s. So that's where...
Scratch that. So it's 20 years.
Yeah.
I hate it when that happens.
2 decades. Yeah, makes me feel really old. But when we first started down this path, and I say we, I'll just say collectively, myself and a few other people. I won't mention their names in case they don't want their own personal, training history aired or whatever. But it was mid-2000s, so this would be, Iraq was still current, Afghanistan was kicking off, and there was guys that had deployed to Iraq and under Blackwater and other various agencies.
Yeah, Blackwater was just one of the big three at the time, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then so, there was I think maybe Triple Canopy was after. I don't really remember. It doesn't really matter. That's not the point of the story. But the point being is that firearms training, there was nobody in Canada doing it. It was very limited.
Yeah.
And so, but it was starting to take off again in the States. And the States has always had lots of fantastic firearms training academies, Clint Smith, Gunsight, all these big schools, and a lot of professional shooters. I mean, it's fucking America.
Damn right.
So then what was happening is as these guys were deploying overseas and coming back home, what do? You fire up a training company. And there was a lot of training companies that were existing where their guys had deployed and they'd come back. And so then they were reinvigorated with all this brand new, fresh from the battlefield knowledge, right? Like had all this.
Sure.
Here's actually what's current. Here's actually what works. Don't do that. That's fucking retarded. That'll get you killed. And so they were. So all this. It's kind of like.
Well, and I think one of the things that Blackwater and companies like it did, I think that Eric Prince, when he was building his model, one of the things that he did was he brought in subject matter experts to teach. Yeah. So you had guys who had the real world experience. They had a career in either law enforcement or military. They might have had some downrange time. Yeah. But here they came back and they're kind of like, well, what am I going to do at the tail end of my career? He brings them in and then teaches them to teach. Yeah. So I think that's where all of a sudden you had all these people who saw a real world application for the teaching end of it. Yeah. And then also how to monetize it. Yeah. So they knew how to build a curriculum. They knew how to, and then all of a sudden 100%. These guys get out into the wild and they're like, well, what am I going to do? Well, Eric Prince is, not unwealthy.
That's a fact.
So if you were looking to, build a business, you may or may not model your business after what he was doing.
Right. So, well, and this would be pretty early. I don't know if he was like super wealthy then. Maybe he was. I don't really know.
I think he came from a bit of cash.
He did. Yeah, that's true. So basically, in a nutshell, is as these guys were starting to circulate back and these training companies were popping up everywhere, companies like Tactical Response, they were growing, right? Their footprint was getting bigger. They had instructors that were, ex-SEALs and Marines, snipers, and all these cool, flashbang, blow things up background, SWAT cops and whatever. And they were willing to travel, right? So like their first classes in Canada weren't up here.
No, it was Abbotsford, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. But then in a roundabout way, we were able to bring them up here. And I remember meeting James for the first time, and he's like, we're all gathered around. He's like, "What's up, motherfuckers?" He's like, "Welcome to America." And we're all looking around because we're in Canada. He's like, "If I'm standing on it, it's America." Because he always had that kind of bombastic personality, right? And lots of cool Jaeger stories. But anyways, so yeah, we fighting pistol. That's the start of it. And I'd already been training for, I think, a couple of years with the local guys doing like defensive pistol or IDPA, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I kind of already knew my way around a pistol a little bit, but had never been exposed to like the real mindset, because under the tactical response, their school, it was like mindset, tactics, skill, and gear in that order. Like gear being the least important, mindset being the most. So the whole goal of the school is to teach a fighting mindset, to teach people how to shoot and win, and that was kind of their thing. And of course, back then we were just a bunch of fucking moneyed up oil patch guys that just had lots of money. So
ammo was like, cheap.
Yeah, ammo. Oh yeah, like
so cheap.
I won't talk about where we would buy it from, but I could buy cases of 9mm for like $90 for 1,000 for aluminum case CCI.
I hate even in the U.S. now the prices have gone up so high. It's like,
so to me that was I was like, is there a limit to how many I can buy? And the guy was like, nope. I was like, oh, I'll take 10. Like, who cares? Like,
I remember it was the 7.62 by 39.
Yeah,
and you get 2 crates. I think it was like 2 crates and an SKS for like $500.
It was just cheap. Everything was cheap.
Yeah.
Back then. So anyways, so we started doing all this training and, fighting pistol, advanced fighting pistol, fighting shotgun, fighting rifle, advanced fighting rifle, intermediate distance fighting rifle, precision rifle. Like if you named it, we did all those classes.
Yeah.
And what we didn't know at the time is that it wasn't normal in Canada. That was my fighting pistol was my first firearms class ever, my first formal class. I just thought that was, I guess that's what a firearms class is. So then, as we did that for a few years and for various reasons, State Department reasons, I think there was the whole, I think the statute of limitations. Who cares?
Yeah, a whole bunch of things hit.
So what happened?
Got HITAR control that weren't before.
One of the things that was, if you were training Americans, you couldn't be training outside of the country because then what you're doing is we'd be foreignly trained nationals now. So they're like looked at it as like you can't be training people from another country because that's like training guerrilla fighters and if you were training Americans. So and I believe they had some.
And the U.S. government doesn't like it when you horn in on their business.
No, that's right. So,
if anybody's going to train foreign nationals, if anybody's going to do any FID, foreign internal defense, it's going to be the Green Berets. It's going to be Uncle Sam.
Right. So in a nutshell, it wasn't easy for any of the American companies to teach outside of the border anymore if they had law enforcement and military contracts, which they did at the time. They were teaching, various, whatever, other people. So it just didn't work out anymore. And then kind of fast forward a few years where we couldn't do it anymore. And then as the Canadians had started to cycle through Afghanistan, we start to see the rise of some Canadian training companies and Iraq too. There was Canadians in both. Yeah. And then we'd go to some of those schools and we're like, oh, this is quite a bit different. Like I don't want to say it was watered down, but it was very much it
was more by the book.
By the book and very like, oh well, we don't teach this skill set to civilians. We just teach this. Like there was a pretty distinct line. Whereas the American guys when they came out, they were just whatever you want to do. Like you want to do a whatever drill, let's do it. Like they were just, the interesting thing about Americans and their whole Second Amendment is, at least the ones that I've interacted with in the firearms side of things, in the training sphere, is they don't believe that those rights end at the border. They think that you should have those rights too.
100%.
Because they're God-given inalienable rights.
Yeah.
They don't believe that, I'm just special because I'm American. They're like, oh no, that's everybody's rights. Your government just doesn't recognize them. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the mental shift between the two approaches to training. Is the American stuff is like, let's fucking do it, and the Canadian guys were a little more, quite a bit reserved. Yeah. At least in the commercial schools that you paid money to attend that were formal, where they had a training program that was out there that was.
An interesting kind of aside to that, and I'll probably put. So we track it down, put a link in the description on this one. Obviously, Mike Ritland. You're wearing one of his shirts. Yep. He had a guy on who was a JTAC, so an Air Force air controller. Yep. And he was talking about how he would just get assigned to units when he was over in Afghanistan. Yeah. And he was assigned to he was assigned to the Kiwis, the New Zealanders, so their SAS. He worked with the Brits. He worked with the SEALs. Worked with CAG. Basically, he would just get attached to units going out. And then he said he got attached to CANSOF. Yeah. So one of Ritland being an ex-SEAL, he loves the whole thing. So who, if you got to rate him, who's the best?
Yeah.
And he was like the Kansoff guys.
Yeah.
Like hands down. He's like for their tactics, like their how they acted in the field and their straight professionalism. But he was like, it was also the hangout afterwards. He was like the ability that each guy knew the mission. Each guy knew the why of what they were doing. But then afterwards, that continued on. Like they walked around with a level of professionalism and competency, and you could just tell. And that struck a chord with me because I was like, yeah, any of those guys that I've ever met, the few that I've met, like you'd know, like they stand out in a crowd by their like fucking iron will and competency.
And let me
right?
be clear, those are the guys you want to train with.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, you don't get any higher level of training or any higher level of implementation of that training.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. It was really neat to hear the U.S. guy with that much experience, that much special ops experience, kind of shout out the Canadian Special Operations. So shout out to Kansoffcom.
Yeah, they're cool.
So where were we on the? We were talking about Jaeger and training. Actually, let's just jump to
sure. Jump wherever.
Because you've been teaching for the past 2 years. Through Barton's Back Alley range.
Yep.
And I'd like to do an episode here coming up once you guys kind of wrap up your training season. And
we're done.
Oh, okay. You guys are wrapped for the year.
Excuse me. Our outdoor program is wrapped. Like excuse me. We're done the outdoor portion where all of the next is indoor. So we'll have to come up with our winter schedule where we do all of our indoor pistol and indoor carbine, like pistol caliber stuff.
Yeah. And you are going to be going to shoot the King of 2 Mile here right away.
Yeah, that's coming up like right away here. Next weekend, close.
Yeah. Cool. Definitely want to debrief some of those experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
But you recently trained with Earl Green on his, the vehicle or mounted operations or vehicle operations?
Vehicle CQB.
CQB course?
And then low light pistols.
So
we did 2 classes kind of back to back.
I guess 2 questions in one.
Sure.
How did you find the instruction and how did it feel being on that side of the line for the first time in a while?
They let me shoot a car, bro. It was wicked.
I didn't get to shoot a car when I took that course.
Yeah.
Wait. I didn't on purpose get to shoot a car.
Who has a 12 gauge? I do, coach. Bring it over. How was it being on that side? Or what was the first part of the question?
How did you find the instruction on that side? Because I know you did. We did. We did the trainer, like kind of a train the trainer course with them before. But how did it actually? Because have you actually done a course with Earl on the line before, where you're shooting on the line under his instruction?
Nope.
So how did you find that?
It was really good. Very professional. I like Earl's style of teaching.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I think it probably rubbed off on me more than people think, or him and I have a certain similar method of teaching.
I could see that. Yeah.
The kind of he doesn't put up with a lot of range theatrics and bullshit stuff. He's very straight to the point.
He's been doing it for a long time too. So
one thing you'll get with Earl is just here's what works, and he's not going to show you a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
So it was interesting for me being, going back to being a student. Like I'm an eternal student. I try and train as much as I can, but it was interesting because I was also with kind of my peer group. Like everybody else on that line had, for the most part, a couple guys hadn't, but everybody else there was one of my students as well. So there's also that little bit of extra pressure to make sure
little dynamic shift there
that I'm squared away and switched on. Cause I want to look good, but I don't want to look like the window licker in the class. Right.
Yeah.
I want to be switched on and do it right. But, it was good, man. I had a good time. Earl's, his depth of knowledge, there's not really any questions you can ask where he's not going to have an answer for you. So many years of training and then real world experience, bullets going both ways.
And I find from his background, He comes from a law enforcement background. Obviously, he's been on the podcast. He's told us the story of the origin story of Earl.
Yeah.
But he is trained with so many good schools. So he's trained with the SIG Academy. He trained with Vickers. He's been and then his competition background. So he's got a lot of different stuff that he brings to the table, and also like his SWAT true team background. Yeah. He's just got a lot of different looks at the same thing. So he's had all these different views. And over the years that I've trained with him, I've watched some of his techniques change a little bit to where he's like, no, this works better. And then a couple of years later, he'll be like, I've tweaked it a little bit. I find this works better.
Sure. And the mark of a good coach is that they're always refining their material.
Yeah.
As they come across something better or learn something that's maybe more efficient along the way, they start to incorporate it into what they're teaching and what they're doing. So,
right.
It's like I say, there's just not a lot of bullshit in his class. It's, here's what we're going to do. We'll drill it. My only complaint, and I'll take responsibility for it, is that the classes should be longer. When you look at the amount of material, when you think,
I did a CQB, 1 day. I did both. I've done both of those courses years ago with them. 1 day of low light.
It's not enough, man.
No.
So the vehicle stuff.
I think we even did like a half a day. I don't even think it was a whole day. I think we did like 6 hours of instruction.
Yes, it's not enough. So I think next year we're going to have them out again, and I think that'll be a 2-day program, just to be able to cover and be able to drill it enough, right? Because you want to dry run it a bunch with your team. Make sure, because in anything where there's teamwork, you're doing a lot of dry runs before you go live.
Oh yeah,
to make sure everybody's exactly where they're supposed to be. Everybody's guns pointed in the right direction. There's just a lot going on. So
absolutely, there's lots of movement. What from each? So you took 2 classes with them.
Yeah.
From each class, do you have like a takeaway that you came from from the low light, and then from the vehicle side? Like, what was like one thing that really jumped out? I mean, it doesn't have to be like at the end of the day you were like, aha, eureka moment. Could have been just something like in the moment, and you were like, oh wait, this works differently than I thought.
I don't think it was really like the actual, like the running the gun part.
Yeah, exactly.
I run the gun.
Yeah.
The vehicle stuff. So we had what the fuck was it? Like a Kia Sorento.
Why is it always a little shitty
car?
I think we had like a Geo, like a little tiny Geo.
I remember your story.
Metro.
You were talking about when you were doing a class and you bailed out of the vehicle and it was like a fire sale on gear.
Well, yeah, because we had contact right, and I was in the passenger seat, and I figured I'll bail out the driver's side in full kit, and plus it's colder than fuck, so I'm wearing all these insulating layers. Yeah. So the combat roll out of the car might have not been the most advised tactic, because
it looks cool on TV, but
mags and shit everywhere. But
so one of the main things with the vehicle stuff is, like, because we're in Canada and all of our guns are prohibited now, except the occasional. There's about 10 semi-autos that we have that they're all full length guns though. They're all rifle length, so they're
18.5 inch barrels.
When you're trying to move 18.5 inch guns in a small vehicle, it's not easy.
No, I think I took that course with an 11.5 inch CSA.
No, back in the day I was running a 10.5, and I was like, man, this is easy.
Yeah.
I don't see why is everyone bitching?
Yeah.
But I'm always the smallest guy on the team, and I had fucking trouble moving in and out of that vehicle.
I bet.
So the bigger guys, I didn't envy them, but on one of the iterations, of course, my door was jammed, so I had to exit. I was on driver's side, had to exit passenger side from the back seat, so I had to go all the way around. Man, I got, like, you're getting hung up, and it's just not easy to move. So I think when that's another one of those things. If for some reason you're doing that kind of work,
that's why terrorists just blow themselves up. They're like, fuck it, I'm not getting out of the car.
It's much easier to just detonate it, I guess. So I guess vehicle CQB, just I guess one of the other things, I bailed out of the vehicle and I come around, and my job was to take up a position on the passenger side. Mm-hmm. And as I rocked my gun, like, I just posted up on the pillar at the back. And of course the car had been shot, so there's like this jagged thing. So I'd, like, my hand stopped, crunch, like on those points, and I was like, oh, that's where it stops. So just it sucks. The thing about shooting around vehicles is not great. And then, geez, low light. Low light was a little different.
Because we're talking just white light.
Yeah, we're talking white light, low
Yeah.
light pistol. So
Yeah.
we're not doing rifles.
Yeah,
So,
no IR, no nods, nothing like that.
yeah, so there was a lot of principles which I mean those are in my notebook and they're stuck in my head. I won't really talk about them too much just because.
Yeah, there's I don't expect you to go into any tactics or any techniques he's teaching, but I'm just curious about, because I've taken those classes before, and I remember kind of the moments of, like, oh, I had gear here, and this, maybe I'm going to move it around, or deploying it this way, and then being like, oh, I might have to move the way my hands are, or just the principles of light flooding and stuff like that. Where you're like,
yeah. Like,
oh,
I mean,
okay.
in terms of kit and the way I lay my stuff out, I mean, after all this time, and again, I'm not an old dog, and I'm not great at this, but I have that part of my stuff is squared away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any issues there. I think low light, one of the biggest things was kind of the order of operations, because we did a significant portion of that class was low light CQB, so room clearing. And so what happens is when you're going from room to room, it's like as a singleton operator without a team. So we're from the perspective of a civilian, as if that's for some reason what you're doing. The order of operations, you better not fuck it up. It's like, well, do I reload now? Right? Like you don't want to hit that room with an empty, like you got 10 round mags. Like it was just a little bit of the workflow was interesting. And
the things to consider, like when I took that course, there wasn't a lot of movement involved. So it sounds like Earl's grown that course and changed that curriculum quite a bit. I like the idea of putting some movement in there. I mean, like I said, if from the beginning, like and one of the things I'd like to speak to is like the practicality of this kind of knowledge base. Because a lot of people will be like, well, why do you need to know that? It's like, well, like the beginning of it is Atrocity is out there and it's just waiting to visit you at some point. And maybe it does in your lifetime and maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't visit you, that means it's visiting somebody else. That's the only reason why it's not you today.
Yeah. So I guess from my perspective, if someone was to ask like, well, why do you need to know any of that? Why do you take all these classes? Why do you do it? To me, and maybe this is American influence a little bit. To me, guns is just another martial art, and I study it with the same passion I do anything that I study on the mats.
I don't think there's a martial artist alive on the planet who would disagree with you.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few.
Sure.
But fuck those guys.
Yeah, they're not important to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I'm not important to them. I'm just some fucking dude in the middle of nowhere. So, so I would say, will I ever need it or what? I don't really care. I have a good time doing it. Here's what I don't have. I don't have a motorcycle. I don't have a jet boat. I don't have a heroin addiction. I don't, you know what I mean? There's all these things that people blow money on. I don't have a sports car. I don't have any of that.
And they all come with risk.
Yeah. So I do what I do and people do what they do. And at this point it's like, I can still do it. So I'm gonna.
Yeah. Well, and
it's not, I'm not at some underground fight club like during COVID.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get wrapped around the axle of this idea where guys are out playing Rambo, right? And they're preparing for the Red Dawn and the end of the world.
So I will say in my history of 20 years of doing this, there's not a single person that I've trained with who has a ton of professional training who's ever went Red Dawn Rambo fantasy.
Yeah, I would be lying to you if I didn't say that Rambo and Red Dawn didn't play a role in my interest in things like guns, survival, self-reliance, all that kind of stuff, because I'm a child of the 80s.
Yes, same.
And that's just who I am. I can't deny that, nor can I change that, and nor do I want to. But like I said, when I started taking these courses, I was actually really shocked with the amount of professionals. Actually, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Nerds. The amount of nerds.
Yeah.
I was like, these guys are not your alpha, jacked up, steroid, wannabe military guys at all. Like, you're more likely to get into a conversation about like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Than you are about like football, right? Like, what I found was people who are intelligent, people who are either upwardly professional or semi-professional, young people. There were, some people are rural, but they're young and rural and they're used to growing up around firearms and they want to take that knowledge to the next level. And the thing that I saw that for me, after all the years of doing that kind of training, what it offered me was my ability to risk assess got a lot better.
Yeah.
because you're working with people, you're working around firearms are inherently dangerous. You're doing these complicated movements that are inherently dangerous, that there's 100% accountability.
Well, it's kind of like, when you go to work and everyone has to do the tailgate safety meeting and the daily morning safety meeting, whatever it is, and nobody fucking wants to be there.
Mm-hmm.
In the gun industry, like in the training world, you live by that. You don't just pay
100%.
lip service to it at the tailgate and then forget about it for the day. You either live within those rules or you're not welcome in the club. It's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
And all the people that I've trained with over the years, like when you show up to a 3-gun match, which is kind of, without getting into the politics of how things have declined in Canada through, government and politics and
sure.
Like but all these matches over the years, when you show up, all the guys that were training, those are the guys that are the safest guys on the line. Those are your safety officers. Those are the guys that are mentoring the guys that are purely in it from the sporting side.
Yeah.
Your guys with training, they're the ones mentoring all those guys and making sure they're doing it safe. And then on the professional end, so we have a fledgling training company that's been around for a couple of years. We've had military law enforcement guys come and train with us, and they're like, holy shit, like this is, the reviews that we get are very professional and very respectful, and guys really like what we're doing. So I think there's a certain amount of also is like, if you have the skills and you have the opportunity to pay it forward so that those people can succeed in their careers, that's a big thing too, is that it's not just the domain of the government. They don't have a monopoly on those skills.
100%. And that's a whole other side to it. I mean, probably a whole other podcast or series of podcasts.
Yeah, could conceivably be.
And I'll sum up my opinion, my beliefs on civilian firearms ownership in basically this way is, the U.S. Constitution is probably the best document ever written by mankind. The biggest, the Bible's an amazing book, but it's inspired by God. I'm not going to say the Constitution isn't, but enshrining the right to free speech and secondly, the right to bear arms is about as close as you can get to somebody looking at the entirety of human history and being like, well, what went wrong?
All of it, yeah.
Well, these people couldn't express themselves, couldn't be themselves because they didn't have weapons. And somebody else came along and wiped them out or subverted them, subverted their beliefs, subverted their speech because they had a monopoly of violence. Yeah. Any government that has a monopoly of violence will oppress its people.
Yeah,
I don't think that's open to debate.
It's a fucking fact, because you can look at if you want to look at recent world events, during the time of the Great Cough, the rest of the Commonwealth, you look at how they were fucking beating people in Britain and in Australia and all over the world. So New Zealand, look at the lockdowns. Again, I'm not saying that it wasn't brutal in Canada, but there's a distinct difference here in this country.
Yeah, I think so. To the point where we have
Aussies and the Brits and the Kiwis, they're not armed.
No, I mean to some degree, but if you had to pick out, and I'll talk about just Canada because the U.S. there's a new case study every other week in the U.S. In Canada, how long ago was COVID? A couple of years back.
Sure.
There's still dudes in Alberta under trial from the state.
Yeah, and why? Because they
stood up to the state.
Right, and look at what the charges are, which are all bullshit if they're all firearm related.
But that was owned firearms.
Right.
And in Canada, if you own firearms, you have a little card that says you waived a whole fuck ton of your rights by the state.
Yeah, you're all that card is a suspension of criminal charges.
100%.
Everything, the entire way that the law in Canada is written is you're a fucking criminal.
It might even be viewed as probable cause by the Crown.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you even have the license?
Yeah.
Like, what are you, some kind of a nut?
Some kind of,
I think that's the way it's viewed, and it's not an accident. But that just sums it up. Like, I'm an absolutist on two things, and that's freedom of speech and freedom of belief. Yeah. Believe what you want, say what you want. There's consequences, and the reason why there's consequences is because of the right to bear arms. Yeah. And the right for people to not be dominated by the next biggest bully on the street, even and especially if it's the government or any other power structure of the day, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, I would say my opinion is very similar.
Yeah,
Not enough to.
And I think that's where we see these types of courses. They offer safety and self-reliance. If you're taking firearms training courses, you're going to be a safer person. You're going to be a more confident person.
Yep.
If and when you should ever need to use a firearm for any reason, so be that for recreation, be that for sporting purposes, be that for hunting, or be that for the 1 in a million. Hey, guess what? Some people live rural and the cops aren't coming.
Yeah.
They might be an hour. They might be a day in some places in this country. That you're not a danger to yourself and the people you're trying to protect, right? Like you said, on the line and a shooting course or a shooting competition, you're shooting 3-gun, you're shooting IDPA. Yes, the people who have had top level or the best instruction that you can get in this country are typically safer. As well, out hunting, out in the field, you will see people who have that level of training are generally
I
safer,
think what happens
better
too,
manipulations than other people.
Part of the reason that people seek out that extra level of training is, you go and you do your PAL course, or for your possession acquisition license to have a gun. So the Canadian Firearms Safety Program,
CFSC,
course, whatever the fuck it is. I don't know because I don't teach that. They wouldn't take my application all those years ago.
Big loss for you.
But people come to us, they have their PAL. They don't even know how to run a gun. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't understand the basic functions of it. So you take that course and you're like, okay, this is a gun, and you have to show on a what would you call it? An inert training firearm, like one that's been
deactivated.
Yeah, some of the levers still work and the switches and buttons or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you have to show that you can handle it safely and that you're not choose your words carefully. This cartridge goes in this firearm. And so you kind of go through the motions.
Into an internal magazine in a hunting rifle versus an external magazine.
And now, to be fair to the program, is it does checks and boxes, right? It's like, okay, like you have a base understanding. The problem is that the subject's so deep that it can't be summed up in a 10-hour.
Well, yeah, even if you were going to teach just how to safely operate a bolt-action hunting rifle.
Sure.
Is it a Savage? Is it a Remington? Is it a Tikka?
The safeties are all
Seiko?
different. There's some different nuances with each one. But my point being is that when people come to us for that extra level of training, good, because they don't know anything and they know they don't know it. So that's why they're coming to professionals. And when they leave, guess what? They know how to run that gun. And the more safe you are, the more you learn to run it, the safer you are with it. You build in good habits. Like, okay, I apply my safety every time the stock breaks cheek weld or whatever it calls for. But then when people realize that, these rules that I'm living within through this course, they apply to all firearms. They're all the same. And we can apply these universal principles.
Yeah.
And they build confidence through the day. By
That's
the end
why
of the day,
it's a martial art.
Right. And by the end of the day, they're running their gun safely and correctly. In most cases, well before the end of the day. Because there's kind of a zero tolerance for
fuckery.
Yeah. No, you can't point your gun at anybody.
Yeah.
We don't have that happen in our courses.
Yeah, you will put your safety on after every evolution.
And you will have your finger outside the trigger guard when you're not shooting.
Yeah.
So some things where you get warned once, unless it's some kind of egregious violation, but that's a whole other thing. My point being is at the end of the day, these people are so much safer.
Yeah.
And now if that guy's out hunting or whatever, you know that he's safe with his gun. Regardless of what he came to us to learn on, whether he took a shotgun, if he took a shotgun class, he'll be safer with his bolt action rifle. It doesn't really matter because it all applies the same. The mindset behind training. So, we're basically running a bunch of safety programs.
Well, 100%. And that's where I'm getting at. Like, this is what I'm getting at with violence, and this is what I'm getting at with training, is people would say, you train because you want to get in a fight, right? And it's like, no, what I'm training for is the likelihood of violence being low in my environment in which I live. But in the highest end of that, should something happen, I want to be able to respond with the most knowledge I can get in my environment. Nobody's trying to be Jason Bourne, What they're trying to do is mitigate their lack of knowledge, because a little bit of knowledge, like if you have a level of 1 knowledge and something happens involving a firearm, or you're in a situation with a firearm, it's 100% more knowledge than 0.
Yeah.
And I would say infinitely more than if all of your knowledge comes from Hollywood or video games.
Sure.
Right? Because I think the further you go down that road, the more of a hazard you become, because you don't understand what the implications or applications of the violence and of the sick are. So I think it's really interesting that these kind of courses exist. I think it's interesting that they're marginalized. One thing about the shooting courses, or like firearms courses, I think that kind of separate them from a lot of martial arts, is that most people come back for the second class in the firing in the firearms end.
Yeah, I would say
a lot of dojos don't have them show up for that second class.
And I couldn't put a number on it, but our repeat customers, it's a big percentage.
Yeah.
If you've trained with us once, I'll guarantee that, like, pretty well there's 90+% chance you're coming back for another class with us.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's people,
you will have had that much fun.
Yeah, I think that there's people who will take martial arts courses, so they'll maybe take something with some contact, something with some person against person. They'll take a jiu-jitsu class, for instance, and they'll go, "Ooh, this isn't for me." Yeah, and maybe the thing they come away from that situation with is, holy crap, physical violence is actually really awful, and I'm going to do a little bit more in my life to avoid it. Right? Yeah. Maybe that's the one thing that makes them safer, that they get out of that one class.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe they came in all talking shit, thinking they were awesome. They got choked out in the first 20 minutes.
I'm going to avoid this at all costs.
Yeah, and they're like, holy fuck, I am both embarrassed and injured.
I don't think I think the unfortunate part about participating in society is you don't really get to pick. So
no. But what I'm saying is, there aren't probably, in my experience, 0 people who show up for a firearms class and at the end of the day go, holy crap, this isn't for me, I'm going to sell all my guns.
That never happens.
Yeah, exactly 0 times have I seen that happen.
Like, I need another gun.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny though, and I don't want to detract from the industry, because obviously I'm trying to grow it, but there is a weird disconnect. Aaron Little, mutual friend, well-respected coach. Years ago, he told me, probable versus possible, and weight your training accordingly. And so one of the things that I tell my students, I'm like, hey, look, in 20 years of doing this professional firearms training, the amount of gunfights I've been in is exactly 0.
Yeah.
Okay. But the amount of fistfights, I can average it out like it's 1 a year, where I get into some kind of altercation. Typically it's a business related thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, so as much fun as all the gun stuff is, there's a reason that I'm on the mats training jiu-jitsu, because I'm probable versus possible. It's probable that I will get into a physical altercation with somebody. It's highly probable.
Yeah, much more probable than.
Is it probable that I'll get into a gunfight? Not really. It's possible.
It's the odds in this country are increasing all the time.
Sure, they are,
and not because guys like you and me are carrying guns.
No, so again, that whole probable versus possible. I think people should do both. I think if you like one, you'd probably like the other if you can wrap your head around the mindset behind it.
Yeah.
But again, it's, to be fair, it's easier to run a gun and poke a bunch of holes in a piece of cardboard or shoot a steel plate than it is to go and try and choke somebody unconscious.
100%. I'm fond of saying that. Every male born on this planet believes that they have an innate ability to drive, fight, or fuck.
Yeah.
Right. And those are the biggest blows to the ego.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. When you realize that you don't know how to drive,
you can't back that trailer in there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't drive like you thought you could. Yeah. You definitely can't fight like you thought you could. And you definitely can't.
I think the reality about fighting is it's ups and downs anyways. And there's times where I'm switched on and I feel like I'm unstoppable. And then there's other times where I'll just get beat up for months in a row.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the journey though. I think when people take that on, like yourself, as part of their lifestyle, that you say, this is what I like and this is who I am. These are the things that I do, then that's part of the journey you go on. I think that martial path is very clearly defined. I think everybody that walks down that path or journeys down that path for any length of time, like I'm not talking like they get past the 3 trial days, 3 free classes or whatever. Once they get into that, I think everybody's experience to a degree is similar.
Yeah, I think so. Like I want to be clear too. It takes an immense amount of courage just to walk through that door for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and to expose yourself to it. But.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it too is you get on the line with a bunch of switched on shooters who've done a lot of training, and you can see what they can do. And all of a sudden you know nothing.
Yeah.
You're consciously incompetent at that moment.
Yeah. Do you want to know how I deal with that?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So here's my pro tip. So when you're on the line and coach says, okay, I need a shooter, just go first, put up your hand and step forward. Like, I'll do it.
Yep.
I always, where I can, I always step up and go first. Cause I look at it like this. It gets rid of all that nervousness. Who gives a fuck? Sure. I'll go first. Everybody else can learn from my mistakes. And if they crush it because they got to watch me fail, good for them, man. What's the cost of going first?
Yeah.
What does it really cost you?
Well, and putting up your hand, it's one of those things that gains you interesting dividends. I've noticed that in the corporate world.
Yeah.
So I'll be in like some corporate training in a boardroom somewhere, and so we're going to run this exercise, or we're going to do this, or whatever, and I'll put up my hand first. And I think that's something that I learned from you.
Yeah.
And I'll run through that, and I realized by like whatever lesson 6 or whatever, I'm the only fucking guy putting up his hand, and I'm like, aren't you guys here to get this training? Like, you probably volunteered for this training. Maybe 1 or 2 of you were told you were going to take it. Most of you volunteered to come take it. And you volunteered to come take it because you're trying to pad your CV. Like, you're trying to get something on your resume so you're worth more, so you can make more money, so you can have a better life for yourself or your kids or whatever. Like, we're all climbing the same fucking ladder. Like, nobody's here for fun, right? Nobody's like, oh, man, you know what I'd really love to do? I'd love to do HR training today. Like, we're all here for the same reason. So why aren't you trying, like, I get it, you're trying to check the box, but I'm like, why wouldn't you get something out of it?
Yeah. And so that's a lesson that I'll throw it back to Jaeger. But that's a lesson I learned from him, because in one of his, it was like a mindset lecture. He was talking about, in under stressful situations or things are happening. Maybe you're in a building and it's on fire.
Yeah.
And everyone's standing around confused. And you're thinking to yourself, man, someone needs to get these people moving. I got fucking news for you, shitbird. It's you. You're the guy that needs to do it.
Yep.
You thought about it. If you're the guy thinking somebody needs to do it, it's you.
Yeah, you got to have that bias for action.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's something I took to heart.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things that coming out of, the training world, when I took that mindset into my personal life and my professional life, I was like, oh, this is rare. Like, not many people do this. Not many people are that engaged or even trying to be that engaged or are trying to be that proactive. And it's interesting to see that, what I'm talking about, like, why would you take these courses? Why would you learn these things? What good does it do? Well, it turns out there's a whole bunch of good that it does. And, you try and make yourself better in one part of your life, try and, expose some ignorance, fill a gap, something you don't know. It makes you better in other instances in your life if you let it.
Absolutely.
And that's where these things have value. And I think because it's high risk, but because it's high stakes, that those impressions go deeper, right? I think the things that you learn in those courses, because you're dealing with something that has a ton of accountability on the other end of it. Like, the business end of a firearm is all of the accountability in the world.
Yeah, sure is.
And when you're playing in that sandbox, those lessons get ingrained a little bit deeper, I think. And you come away from that and you can use those lessons through. I mean, providing you have good instruction,
sure,
providing you have good coaches, good training.
It's a huge confidence builder for people. You get through a 2 or 4 or 6 day shooting package, it's hard not to.
And all the networking and stuff aside, like I said, there's a lot of professional, semi-professional. I would wager that the networking end of it is probably better than you'd get on any golf course.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I don't know because I don't golf, but I'm sure there's a similar.
Yeah, it's way better than golf.
Yeah, I like it better than golf, but.
So I guess I had one more question for you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I'm interviewing my co-host.
No, just fucking fire away, man. I'm happy to be here.
But just because something popped up on my radar here recently, and you mentioned earlier that in Canada, due to our really, really shitty firearms laws, all our guns are illegal. But there are companies who have spent a good deal of R&D money building various types of, and I'll narrow it down to one type. So a long gun that is semi-automatic magazine fed.
Yeah.
And we have seen, I don't want to say a proliferation, but a lot of these things popping out. So there's
4 or 5.
There's a Raven, there's a Crusader, there's the WK. I saw a new one recently that's got a proprietary magazine.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on all this? Is this just because they just seem to ban everything eventually? So is this just another exercise in futility? After all this, are you chasing the dragon, buying all these things? Is there some validity to it? Like what's your opinion on?
I don't think free people are ever chasing the dragon. The market will find a way. One thing we know for sure is the market always finds a way. So is it a waste of time? I don't think so. I think that entrepreneurial spirit to give the people what they need or want, that's always going to exist.
Yeah.
Are these guns as good as, the AR-15s that we had a few years back? No, they're not. Will they get there? Yeah, I guess given time, if that's what we have. And a lot of these guns are already on Gen 1, 2, 3.
Sure, and anything based on
one
that
thing about Canadian
AR-180 that's a proven system. Yeah.
And so far in my dealings with the Canadian manufacturers, I know some of the guys at Lockhart and Kodiak Defense. Mm-hmm. They're solid guys, man. And they're again, you'll always hear the complaining side of things on the internet. But by and large, these guys are busting their nuts to get rifles on the market for Canadians.
Right.
Are they good rifles? Yeah, they're decent. Here's the deal. When we were running AR-15s, everybody carried spare parts. Spare bolt carrier group, spare pins, spare this, spare that. Why? Because the guns did fucking break, and we knew it.
Yeah.
Now, guess what we're doing with the Canadian guns? We're carrying spare parts. Why? Because they fucking break too.
Yep.
And most of them, it just comes down to... it's like anything else. If you're a lazy piece of shit, your gun's not going to work because you didn't look after it. It's guns, gear, grub in that order after class.
Yeah.
It's the same old fucking thing. If you look after your gun, it'll look after you. I won't shit talk any specific brands, but we do see breakage. I personally see breakage because I run these guns at a higher round count than most people ever will. Yeah. And I see all kinds of breakage. And generally speaking, when I reach out to the manufacturer, it's they have no problem looking after you. And when they reach out direct to customer, like customers, if somebody buys a gun from me, not me specifically, but Barton's, and they have an issue with it. They come back, man, 9 times out of 10, we sort that issue out at the counter. We show them what's going. Like, hey, look, did you bother to read the manual? Did you oil this thing? Well, no, I just took it out and shot it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times, any problems with those guns are directly attributed to the customer.
Sure.
Where we see breakage and we see parts fail, what we also see is we see the manufacturer stepping up to the plate, providing the parts on warranty, free of charge, shipped to the customer, because they realize that, okay, we fucked up. We made a shitty product here, or this piece of the gun isn't working quite right. And so by and large, they're succeeding.
Yeah.
Will they still be around? Will they succeed at the level of, let's say Polyev gets elected and does everything he says he's going to do and repeals C-21 and rewrites the Firearms Act and, oh, fuck, we're all saved and we can buy pistols again and AR-15s for everybody, which, again, I won't get into whether I think that will or will not happen. But let's say it does. will the Canadian market, will they make it? You're fucking right they will, because what'll they do? They'll start producing ARs.
Well, I think there's
or shorter versions of their guns.
There's
guns
a marked
good enough.
difference between what that market is trying to do versus what the U.S. market is trying to do.
100%.
Right?
Again, Canadian guns are designed for sport shooters.
100%. None of these are going to war.
No, the reality is that any gun made in Canada was designed with either sport shooting or hunting, predator control, those kinds of things. They're not 100%. Designed for self-defense. So we're not looking for the same reliability as far as like, you can bet your life on it, right? Like that's not a slogan in Canada.
Exactly.
And it's never going to be a slogan on somebody's gun advertisement where you can bet your life on it. But generally speaking, most of these guns are fairly good.
Even though in Canada, they say that, the parrot point from most of the government end of things will tell you that there is no inherent right to self-defense with a firearm in Canada. Yet when you call the CFC, one of the first options they give you is your license to your authorization to transport or authorization to carry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if it's the third option, then obviously there's the fact that an avenue exists means that there is
we're
a legitimate case for defense with a firearm. It's just you're only narrowing it down to a few very influential people in politics.
We're a country with an identity crisis. I think there's we're always very.
I'll agree.
Our politicians are always quick to anything gun related. They want to blame. Right away, they shifted on American violence, whether it's school shootings or mass shootings or whatever.
Quick to not be American. That's the Canadian way of life.
That is our identity. Yeah. It's anything but American.
Yeah, not Americans.
But I think if you look at, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. Maybe it does, but if you look at the wilds of Alberta, I'll only speak about my province because that's my home.
Sure.
And it's fucking mine. When you're out in the backwoods here, like you look at the instances of where people are killed, let's say by wildlife. And there was that couple killed, I think it was last year, the couple that was mauled in their tent, and they did all the right things. They had bear spray. They had a spot, with the emergency SOS thing. They had a dog. So they did everything. And Parks Canada even said that, hey, these people did the right thing.
Yeah.
They did everything. They still died. So they were conscious enough to know that this bear was displaying whatever behavior. The dog was obviously alerting. I didn't see in the report whether or not they actually utilized the bear spray. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But it looks like they got, they were killed in their tent. But they did have time to send out this spot message, which alerted the emergency responders and then their closest friends and family, whoever's on their contact list.
Yeah.
So then what happens? They get killed. Parks Canada responds, and there's a vicious sow grizzly that
because this was in Jasper National Park last year, right?
Displays aggressive behavior, and what do? They fucking shoot it.
Yeah.
Right, because they're the state and they have the monopoly on violence.
100%.
Here's what I know for sure. If those people had a firearm, they'd still be alive. They could have killed the bear.
Well, a higher chance they'd still be alive. The bear has a chance too.
So statistically, I'll send you the article later, but myself and a few other friends have kind of researched this to death a little bit about the instances of where a firearm was present in a bear attack and whatever. It's like the odds of surviving go up to something like 80%.
100%.
And this is all mostly American statistics where they used a pistol. And then it goes into like 9 mil, 10 mil, 45. It breaks it down, but like 40, 454, like all your classic American big fucking grizzly calibers for the Alaskans. The rate of survival goes drastically up.
Yeah.
It gives you another option. So, will it ever happen in Alberta? I don't know. But what I do know is that if it ever went down that path, there's no reason that people in Alberta shouldn't be able to pack a fucking revolver or whatever in their backpack or in their or whatever when they're out hiking in the backcountry. Like, it's just, again, when I say we're a country with an identity crisis, it's like, okay, they're not out, they wouldn't have been out there shooting fucking beer cans. They're out there hiking in the backcountry.
Yeah. All you would have given them is the tool to save their life.
It is really, it's 100%. So, will it ever get there? Probably not, but it's fucking stupid that it's, that we can't do it.
Yeah. No, not that we can't. You just have to have a trap line.
Right, well, sure, or be a prospector or a geologist.
Uh-huh.
There's all the or fucking like, yeah, if it's work related, okay, so I'm only important while I'm working. Like,
Well,
it
you're
only matters,
generating revenue for the state, my friend.
right? Oh, I'm generating tax dollars right now. But if
Yeah.
I'm just out there on my own personal time, then it's
It's pretty ridiculous.
again, country with an identity crisis. And
That's and you know, I think when we say, well, we need some common sense. It's kind of funny in the U.S. They're like, we need common sense gun laws, and in Canada, we're like, yeah, we need some common sense gun laws, man. Like, ones we have are fucking retarded.
Yeah, and so I guess that's one of the big differences between us and the States. And here's something I am okay with, and I fucking brace myself for the spears, but I'm okay with having to have a base level of training and a license of some sort to get you into the club that says, yes, you can own firearms. Like, I don't believe that it's like just anybody should be able to walk into the store and buy one.
100%.
I am 100% about, yep, you checked the criteria that you know, you've gotten some training, because I think it's important. Because again, I understand the potential downfalls and what the capabilities are of playing in that world. So I'm okay with a certain, you know, checkbox.
Yeah. So,
and one thing that's blows my fucking mind in this country. So when COVID kicked off, and everybody thought the world was going to end, right? This was when the footage was like, oh, they're the bodies in China, and
right, people dropping dead in the streets.
Yeah, so they're fucking welding apartment buildings shut and all that stuff. They're probably political dissidents, but that's another story. But there was lineups out the fucking door of the store.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people coming in and they're like, I need a gun. You're like, okay, cool. Like, which one do you want? They're like, oh, that one. You're like, okay. Yep. Yeah, I'll take it. And you're like, all right, like, I just need your license. Like, license? Yeah, like, your license. I don't have a license. Okay, well, we'll see you in 6 months. Like, what?
Yeah.
But I need this. Like, people would just be in tears because they thought the world was going to end. And there was probably for a few weeks, like, there was person after person after person who finally thought they were in enough danger that they needed a gun because they thought the world was going to implode. And then they realized that, oh, I can't have one. And you know what? Part of me is like, good.
Yeah, I get that.
Did you want to just, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a society that just fucking hands shit out for free.
Yeah, well, you don't. Yeah, I get that. The U.S. is crazy in its absolutism. When I talk about the right to bear arms, I'm with you, because I don't consider myself an absolutist on that, because
no, I do believe in that right. I think, but
the people that believe it's for all people.
Yes.
So if you're a criminal, you've done your time, you get out of prison, you're in the U.S., you're a felon, you still can't own a firearm. Yeah. You're still, it's nope, you've done your time, you should be able to own a gun, even with a history of violence. Like, okay, well, that's a discussion to be had. The one that's coming on right now is illegal immigrants in the U.S. So people who've come to the U.S., do they have the right to bear arms?
Seems like it.
Well, absolutists would say yes.
Yeah.
All people have the right to bear arms, right? So it's kind of like, and I get that, because I think you need to have absolutists and extremists in the viewpoint.
Sure.
Because those are the people who are going to make sure that the rest of us don't Canada away the rest of our fucking rights.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to go, no. Like, every law is an infringement, because every law is an infringement. Yeah. Right? It's just how much of an infringement are you comfortable with giving up? Me, coming from where I've lived and where I'm coming from, like from Canada, and even though I am by all rights a gun nut, and I say that with the most loving affection for the term, but even I believe that there should be a modicum of training involved. And I'm not talking about government licensing, but you should be able to be like, this is who I am, and I'm taking this course,
right?
And I'm taking it for safety.
I think the unfortunate thing is most things, of course, in our country will be regulated by the government. But even if you look at most of the, I shouldn't say that with any certain authority now. In the States, though, it's very common. So if you want to carry a firearm in the States, it's a lot of them are shall issue, but there's still a course you have to take. You still have to pass a concealed carry course or a concealed deadly weapons course.
A huge group of them are all just open carry, no license now.
Right, which I'm kind of like, well, whatever. I mean, it's the I guess Darwin will sort some things out where play stupid games, win stupid prizes. There's always that kind of aspect.
Yeah, exactly. But, and like when I came into the beginning, right? Atrocity.
Yeah.
Right. The bad thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, if it's not happening to you right now, it's because it's happening to someone else right now. Yeah. And it might not be next door. It might not even be in your city. It might not even be in your country. It's happening to someone. And yeah, we can say that, if there were more guns equal, more gun deaths. Well, yeah, that's just the way of the world, right? Not necessarily. There's lots of countries that have a lot of guns that don't have a huge amount of gun deaths. But those are atrocities. And if they're not happening there, they're going to happen somewhere else.
Well, I think if you could separate it out, because I think it's two separate discussions when they talk about, more guns equals more gun death. Sure. But if you sorted it out between legal law-abiding people and then fucking shit.
Oh, sure,
criminals,
we can go through all that.
It doesn't like. So if you're looking at the numbers as a whole, well, of course, it's a hard thing to argue.
Yeah, I mean, if you really break it down, like the U.S. numbers, like the FBI's got some really good stats on all that
our
stuff.
amount of shootings in Canada are on the rise.
Okay, 100% they are.
And it's fucking massive. So Toronto, there's another shooting the other day. Vancouver, some whack job chops off a guy's hand and kills somebody else. And it's violence is on the rise, period. And the only people that are affected by all of these feel-good laws that are passed are guys like you and I. Yeah. Criminals are criminals. So you can't really, so if there was a way to, if the media was just honest with the numbers and governments were honest with the numbers, it'd be a different story, different discussion.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, there's a few things that put me in the category of a firearms rights advocate. Yeah. And most of them are reasons about the government's just unreliable. Yeah. They shouldn't be the only ones with the monopoly on violence, the monopoly of lethal force. Yeah. That should be open to everybody. And we can, be back and forth about who is the everybody, right? I always think that Jocko says it best when he's like, I think I should be able to loan whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. I want a belt-fed machine gun.
Well, exactly. Like if you're coming from that level, like if you're flying F-18s and dropping bombs overseas and you come back and be like, oh, you're going to have to wait 2 weeks for the permit on that handgun. It's like,
what?
I leveled a whole fucking city, dude.
Yeah. I don't think it would be hard for this country to have a grown-up discussion about, separating those two things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of passion, a lot of misinformation.
I'm going to grab a beer and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah, I'll take one too, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind at all. We're back.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother.
So what is fix that? What on your radar for firearms training then? What's on your radar? What are you going to do? Well, when's the last time you hit the range? I'll just rapid fire. When's the last time you hit the range? Like, what are you doing?
It's been a better part of a year, probably.
Yeah. What are you doing to keep yourself on that kind of? Because I know you're an advocate of it, but
yeah, for me, it's
do you have
pretty much all dry fire, and it's not a regular regimen.
Okay, and who's also? I'll just throw it out there now. Is there anybody in Canada on your bucket list of trainers, or anybody that's in the training sphere that you would have access to that you're looking forward to training with here?
Well, obviously, I've trained a good bit with Earl Green and Phase Line Green. If I had my way, I could jump into a course with him every year. Yeah. He's just a hell of a lot of fun to train with and a good dude all around. I come out of every one of the courses I have with him with something I didn't have before. There's a couple of other trainers in Canada that I'm interested in getting in touch with and seeing if they have interest in coming this way. I think the biggest one, if I were to look at like if there's the biggest gap in my knowledge, it would probably be training with Rob Furlong.
Yeah.
So I haven't done any training with his school yet. If I had to like look at a big gap in my knowledge base, I've got some training in long distance shooting, but it's not current and it's not kind of where I would like it to be.
Yeah, fair.
So
his school's fucking legit.
Yeah, well, I've always been intimidated by the amount of math, but now that there's Kestrels and phone apps and stuff like that, and he's been doing it for a long time, like him and his cadre. So I think that's a must do. I think if you're a hunter or if you're a firearms enthusiast, if you're a shooter, I don't think that there would be one that I would like recommend to do more than that one, like because I think what he has built. From what I can see and from guys from stories from people like you who've taken the training and been to his range and shot with him is that he's got about the closest thing to a gun sight or something like that in Canada, where he's got his own setup, he's got his own range, he's got his own cadre, his own curriculum that they've been teaching for years, and they're taking the average person and they're teaching them how to read wind, teaching them how to, dope a rifle, teaching them how to shoot accurately, and I mean those basic rifleman skills, right?
Yeah.
That we've had training with Ben Click from
Sierra
64, yeah, and really really great stuff. But for him to have a facility all set up and all that very very professional, I think that's a must do. I think if there was a bucket list one, and if I had unlimited time and unlimited money, I would just take all of his courses till I could do his high angle helicopter shooting off of a mountain course, because that looks like the best way you could spend a weekend.
Yeah, I haven't done that one. Mike did that one. I've only done his level 1. He's got like level 1, 2, 3, and then he's got the high angle one, and then there's the fuck is it called? I got some range up by Turner Valley now. I can't remember the name of the course. It's fucking rad though. It's like a bunch of challenging terrain that you're shooting over, like lots of wind and rock and all that kind of stuff. So
so you're having to make 3 different wind calls in one shot.
Could be. So that is the cool thing about Rob's home range. There is you're gonna fucking shoot in the wind, so you'll figure it out. It's not like
it's Alberta, man. You're gonna shoot in the wind.
Yeah, it's that classic. It gets you out of that comfort zone where people are like they wait for the most calm day possible to go and shoot.
Yeah, exactly. What are you learning?
And then you're out in the field. It's actually time to hunt or pull the trigger, and it's windy, and guys make poor shots. Down there, like you'll learn to shoot in the wind. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and there's a few other people who I don't know if I'd be 100% comfortable to drop their name on a podcast.
Sure. Yep.
They have done training in the past, and if they ever offered it in the future, I would probably be first in line to show up. I would likely clear my schedule for something along those lines. And I don't know who else is out there. There's a group out in BC that's doing, I can't remember what they call it. Some kind of challenge. They do like a 2-day challenge where you're kind of, it's almost like a Spartan race of shooting, kind of like a tactical game sort of.
Oh, okay.
Sort of end of the thing. I can't remember exactly what it's called.
Man, I'm pretty out of touch. Like, to be honest, because I've been focused inward. Like, we've been trying to grow our own training company, so I haven't really been looking to see what's out there because it's like my whole. Yeah,
schedule. I'll send you the link. It's
cool.
Probably some guys that we know from. I think it is.
Yeah.
From like the Abbotsford and that kind of area.
Of the same guys running.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I think they're doing a bunch of that stuff. It looks really cool. But there's a lot of stuff out there. I think my biggest ambition, if I were to say I had one for shooting, would be really to see this area grow. And I think I've said it before, making this area, northern Alberta, that mecca for shooting, having that facility where we could bring in top tier instructors, have a regular course curriculum where people can come out and they can learn, they can share knowledge.
Well, we're well on our way to building it. Like the grassroots have been laid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys are totally moving in the right direction. It's just because of the geography of Canada, right?
Yeah.
Just the travel itself becomes prohibitive just by time.
It is, right? But what we're starting to see is, we got guys from from St. Paul, guys from Edmonton, guys from northern BC coming to our classes. So it just takes a long time to grow anything.
100%. And when you like looking at what Rob Furlong's doing down in southern Alberta, you know, you build that kind of facility. It's the kind of if you build it, they will come scenario, right? Like
it takes a while, but eventually it catches on and people start to.
Yeah, exactly. But because everything is you know a 10-hour drive.
Sure.
Right. That's a whole day there.
That's
and
what
back.
we got coming up. 10-hour drive.
Yeah, a whole day there and back. Yeah. You know, I know guys who are wanting to shoot F class. They're driving out to Burns Lake. Like they're going. That's a good distance. That's a good jog from here, right? Just to shoot F class long distance shooting.
Well, even like I think the Tabor range. I think that'd be fucking 10 and a half, 11 hours from here. But
10 plus from here.
Yeah, so all these places that have a good long ways to shoot.
But everybody's working class, right? So that's one vacation day or one day of your weekend you're burning just driving.
Yep.
Just in travel, right? And then you start looking at the rest of your costs and stuff like that. It's not that it's a bad thing, but it takes away the casual interest, right? Because you can't have a casual interest in something and be investing right off the bat thousands of dollars, and now you're cutting into, you know, that kind of time away and that kind of thing. It becomes a much more specialized interest, and it becomes prohibitive both on cost and time. And
to a certain extent, I think it's like everything else. Like we, you know, I'm part of a 4-man team here that's prepping for King of 2 Mile, and the amount of time, cash, marriage capital.
Oh yeah, you burn a lot of
that everybody's been putting into this to try and you know at least show up and not look like a bunch of fucking idiots. But it's I think it's one of those things. There's guys that will take that extra day off to go to a golf tournament for 3 days, and I think if you're a shooter, you're a shooter. It's kind of like if you look at it in that
100%.
regard, it's, you know, there's always going to be time and money and family commitments that
yeah, if it's what you want to do, then those kind of costs are worth paying. Yeah. Those are just the things that I've noticed over time, like that kind of.
It does make it hard, and that's
less accessible for the. But I mean, there's ranges in town, multiple ranges. Yeah. Are they full every day?
No,
of course not.
I think part of it too is a lot of people in this area for years. I guess I could say for 20 years, a lot of people have talked about, oh, fuck, it'd be cool if we had this, it'd be cool if we had that, it'd be cool if it's like, okay, so you start building it locally, and it's like, well, the guys that want to do it show up, and the guys that are still talking about it are still going to talk about it. And it's that kind of, everybody's like, if it was in my own backyard, I'd do it all the time. It's like, no, you wouldn't. If you really wanted to do it, you'd do it anyways.
Well, like, and I think for a lot of those people, it is in their own backyard because the interest group for that activity, a lot of it's rural.
Sure, 100%
right?
It is.
And a lot of those guys, like, they just grew up shooting off the back porch.
Yeah.
Right? I know a lot of people who are like that, like they go to a range, like they have the membership for the legal requirement.
Sure.
For whatever.
Yeah.
But they've never been to one.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not saying they're doing anything untoward with anything they own, but that's just how they've been raised, and that's just how they live life. It's like, well, I own 150 acres.
You know what though? Fuck, I'll say it anyways. Those are the worst guys that show up in our classes though.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I've probably said it on here before, you can be wrong your whole life and still be wrong.
Yes.
Like if you have to undo like 30 years of training scars because somebody's like a complete, like, holy fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what
I never pointed a gun at anybody because there's no one for 20 miles in any direction.
Right. The first place my finger goes is on the trigger. Like, you're like, this is my safety. Like those people. Yeah,
that's rough.
It is, but
yeah, but most people are good. Like most of the courses you teach, you great students.
Yeah, the percentage
all the classes you took recently, all great students.
Yeah, man. The percentages of most people are open to constructive criticism and correction. So like when you see something that's noticeable, like I always tell people right away, if you're in my class, like I'm not going to buddy fuck you. I'm not going to tell you did something you didn't do. I'm here to get you better. I'm your coach. I want you to succeed. I want you to get good at this. So I'm not going to be like, hey, you did this if you didn't. I don't fuck with people. If I told you did something, it's because you did it. And if they don't believe it, I'll video. I'll be like, look, here's you on video doing it. And they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right? It's because we don't know what we don't know. So
100%.
So my experience as a coach and an instructor it's all been largely positive. Very, very few negative interactions with people.
Yeah, and I think those people who go out of their way to do a hard thing, a difficult and uncomfortable thing, because you got to get, like I said, you got to get through that ego.
Yeah.
Where I'm not John Wick. It turns out that I'll shoot 10 rounds out of my pistol, and I'm not even in the 10 ring.
Yeah.
And they go from that to the conscious incompetence to conscious competence.
Yeah.
Where now they can do what they're supposed to do, and they're not to the point of unconscious competence. Like that takes a long, long time to get there. But they've broken through that ego barrier to now, if there was a situation involving a firearm, a dangerous one, or they had to employ one for whatever reason, they are now better, safer, more effective. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of people I want to be around. I want to be around people who challenge themselves, who challenge their egos, and who at the end of the day are better, safer, more effective people in general. I want better, safer, more effective drivers. I want better, safer, more effective, construction workers. I definitely want people who are in charge of my safety.
Yeah.
Pilots, cops, you name it. I want them to be the best people they can be. And I find the people who are taking on challenging things and doing those challenging things, they're coming away with a little bit of a barrier between them and that atrocity we talked about at the beginning. They have a little bit of a buffer, and even if it's only, only an inch, it's more than they had before. And if they've got it, everyone else around them has it.
Yeah.
And if there's two people, then that circles even further, right? And now we can, our society's more accountable. Our society's a little safer. Families are a little safer. I mean, these are beneficial things. And if we can start to whittle away some of these bullshit ideas about what's good for our society and what's not good for our society, because I think at this point, a certain team has been at the helm of Western society for a good long while.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see the fruit of what has come of that. And it's not great.
Nah, it's weak men create hard times, and I think we haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, fucking A. Yeah. Well, cool, brother.
Yeah, cheers. I guess this is the point where we need my notes. You can find the Gray Range Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram and X.
We're also on CastBox. New website's coming. New book is coming.
All that stuff is coming. We've been saying that for a while, but it's
very,
real.
very soon.
It's
in that critical phase of, like, I'm about to, basically tie off the loose ends and cut it loose. So
you get to the point where you tie off the cord and it's done.
Yeah. Where I could sit there and fiddle fuck with it for another 2 months, but it's just like, nope, just get it done. It's done.
Tie off the cord, turn it over, whack it on the back. It screams and it's on its own.
Yep. Yeah, and run with it.
Awesome.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As usual.
It's been a pleasure.
This is the Gray Range Podcast. Out.
Cheers.